Hello and welcome to today's video in the Daily Conjecture Vlogcast. Hope you're having a good day. I was thinking about something that I have been experiencing lately, and by lately, I mean at least in the last few months that I've been here, but I've also experienced it at points previously in other places that I've lived at before as well. And I'm not entirely sure what word describes this other than to manifest. Now, depending on what type of belief system you are currently engaged in, it might be in the form of prayer or meditation or some type of iteration of that enables you to feel more comfortable, more confident that you will be able to obtain the things that you desire. Now, how I've been experiencing it lately is not in the form of actual verbal or prayer by thought, and it's not in a meditative sense either. Now, I do plan to incorporate some of these ideas at some point down the road in my own personal life when I am when I finally am at least the first location for the projects that I want to do. But in the life that I've been living lately, I have been experiencing something in the form of manifesting that is enabling me to feel like what's going on around me and the things that happen around me and the choices that combined with the choices I make lead to positive results, or at least results that I am able to accept and potentially adapt to as well. So while today's episode might be a bit obscure for some of you, I hope that at least I'm able to explain my experience to give you a better understanding of at least my outlook and how I see at least what the things that happen in my life around me, and just maybe in just a general sense of how I view the world as of right now. I think one of the most interesting things about the human being and the lives they live and how their lives can change in an instant is very interesting in who is in control of that. Is it God or gods or the universe, some type of universal power or universal being that maybe has a grasp and has control over us human beings in our individual lives? Is it some kind of force that works on our planet that makes things go around? You know, we often refer to Mother Nature as something that we can't control. We cannot control if a natural disaster occurs. You know, we can only try to deal with the aftermath. We can only hope to survive and deal with the aftermath, do a bit of cleanup, try to pick up ourselves. For those of you that have been affected by a natural disaster, my sincerest condolences. My heart goes out to you. Anyone who's lost their home to, a hurricane or fires, out in the west of the western United States here, California, all the way to like the Colorado area. I know at least in the past year or so, I've seen multiple different just massive, out of control forest fires that just completely devastate those areas that people live in and around, which is horrific. It is just, it makes me, it makes me really try to imagine myself in that kind of situation. Of the worst that I've experienced in my life, I've been fortunate, knock on wood, I suppose, to never be directly affected by any kind of natural disaster like that. But the reason why I bring that up is because we we often, those of us that are able to kind of live our lives, relatively uninterrupted by any kind of big catastrophes like that, whether it be, Mother Nature or by human hand, which sadly I have had experiences where I've been affected negatively at the hand of another human being. It happens. I try to tell myself that if I'm able to learn something from it, if I'm able to pull myself out of somewhat of a nasty kind of situation and just be aware that these things can and will happen at some point in everyone's life. I mean, I suppose unless you live under a rock your whole life and you don't go out into the world, I mean, even then there can still be an earthquake. Something can still happen to the point where anything can happen, and it's a humbling feeling for personally, having not experienced something too completely life threatening. But on that note too, just still being mindful that things can and will happen. But the reason why I bring this up in sort of today's video of just discussing the idea of manifesting for a little bit is maybe just in a general sense. I could probably look up the definition here and see what it says too. But just for the sake of today's video, and me sharing my ideas and my own experiences, I will basically just do that. It won't be there is no factual content in or at least on this note in what I'd like to discuss with what I believe to be is to manifest, to simply imagine the possibilities and produce the energy that you produce, use it in a way of in a healthy and wholesome way, with good intentions, with good thoughts in your mind, things that you're thinking about that you're like, well, okay, I would like to pursue this, or I'd like to try this because I think it's going to help me get to where I need to go. And then just being very mindful as that whole process plays out. It could even happen to the point where at the end of that experience, it wasn't what you had in mind at all, or at least it went in a different direction than you thought, and it makes you think, that was an experience for me. I still did learn something from that, even if it didn't play out how I wanted to at all. At least I was able to learn something about myself, or at least about how it makes me feel, what it makes me think about in those moments and the moments following it. So anyway, I guess some of the examples I have are absolutely work related. It's kind of one of those things where, with the job I have as a server job, and the app we use Hot Schedules, and you can go on there and see if anybody has released a shift. There's a tab you can click to pick up the shift. It'll show the shift. It'll show what time, what section in the restaurant, and you can go to pick it up. And then at the same time, on the opposite end, if it's projected to be slower, or if it is a slower day, perhaps the manager on duty will actually call you off, give you a call, say, hey, it's going to be slow today. We're just cutting servers, so we're cutting you to have the night off. See you the next time you work. I remember when I first, shortly after I first started, I had informed the manager who was doing the scheduling for servers that there was going to be some complications with my living situation where I would prefer not to be scheduled at nights. So that was initially what my setup was. with them. And then it played out to where I was scheduled on a night. It was a Friday night. And then I had other shifts during the week, and it ended up turning out to where it was slow most of the week, and I was getting called off for a good couple of those shifts, like at least 2 of those shifts, 2 out of 3 I think during the week, not including the Friday shift. So maybe I got called off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, something like that. 2 of those shifts, and I'm getting called off. Friday comes around. I'm getting, it's a few hours before my night shift starts. I'm getting myself ready, preparing myself for the night ahead again, just because of the living situation that I've been in since I've been here. And get the phone call saying that we need to call off some servers. And the other 2 times I just said okay. I just agreed. Obviously as I was going through my mind, the first day I remember being like, all right, that's fine. I'll just try to deal with it. The second day it was a little more frustrated, I guess. Like I would have preferred to actually work that day so that I could get those hours and get that little bit of extra money to help me out. But again, I tried to just roll with it. Even despite the frustration I felt that second day of getting called off that week, I tried to just roll with it and see how it played out and see, I tried to just not let it get me down, not let it just consume me, right? And Friday rolls around, get the same call to have the night off, except for this time, I actually tried to work. I said, I understand, but if there's any way possible, I would really like to work tonight because I do need the money. And the manager who I was speaking with, who called, was like, oh, okay, well, we just thought that, you'd prefer not, you didn't want to work nights, or you would rather not work nights, and that's why we called you to have the night off, just to try to accommodate you for that. And I just responded, no, it's fine. I can work it out, with my situation. I really would like to work if at all possible. And ended up being fine, and they let me come into work that night, ended up making good money. And so in that experience, I was able to get the outcome that I wanted in that moment. The first day, obviously I would have rather worked all of those days, but me just trying to be open-minded, trying to be understanding, yes, I get it, it's slow, I could have made, maybe $100 between those 2 days. If they're slow days, you're not going to make that much. Between those 2 days that I ended up not working, but that Friday I ended up working. I ended up making, I don't know, I don't remember the exact amount, but it was between 150 and 200 that Friday night. And for working a few hour shift, I might have worked 4 hours. So you break it down, if I did make $200, that's $50 an hour, more or less, plus the rate that you're getting paid, which is less than minimum wage because that is the standard for working server jobs. Again, not that huge in my eyes, not that big of a deal. I try to just because my expenses are low, it makes it so that I don't actually need to be making minimum wage or above necessarily to be able to take care of myself. So that incident played out quite well in my favor. At least toward the end of the week, toward that Friday, I was able to object, I suppose, being respectful, right? Try to be understanding and just be professional in that sense and say, I understand, it's going to be slow, but if at all possible, I would like to work. I do need the money. And then it worked out in my favor. They agreed and they let me come in to work. So that experience I think it really sort of kickstarted me kind of being more mindful about this manifesting idea of just exactly what is it? Is it, us proposing our good intentions? I don't claim to be the most unselfish, caring, loving individual out there. I really don't. I have, I'm a human, right? And I have a fluctuation of emotions throughout a day or a week or longer period of time, just like anyone else. But one thing that interests me with this idea of manifesting is how does this energy flow, and how do we make things happen for ourselves in a good way, in a wholesome way, with good intentions and good actions and good words, right? Having the communication skills, having just the drive, I suppose, just having that motivation to say, hey, I understand, but I have to disagree, or at least let me propose a possible solution, possible alternate solution, something like that, which is very interesting to me. And that, on that note too, because of how heavily technology has affected us in our lives, just basically since the age of the internet, right? Since the internet first dropped on, in the late 80s, I guess. And so yeah, from that point, from the internet to the early 2000s, when we're really starting to see some advancements, just between 2000 and 2010. I graduated high school in 2011, and I remember at least because I went to a different high school, and then we moved back to our hometown, in which I started that high school in the 10th grade. So I was there for 3 years, and the program that they had set up, however they worked it out with, I'm guessing with MacBook or whoever, however they did it, all the students were equipped with the MacBook Air. And so that was our tool, essentially. That was them integrating, computers, technology, but in like an everyday kind of sense, to where, you were doing your papers on it, you were doing your research, you were, doing PowerPoint presentations for some classes. I suppose the only classes where the MacBook Air were used the least were the trade classes. We would get on the buses to go to those classes and go to a completely different campus. And those were like the trade classes. Those was where that campus is where I did a couple of the drafting classes, drawing up floor plans, architecture. I did do one of the AutoCAD classes as well, learning how to, build and design parts on the computer with that program. And I remember doing a computer class there. I did an automotive class there. So all of those kind of trade classes were at this campus, in which we didn't use the MacBook Air that much because they already had computers set up in their labs there that we use for those programs, especially CAD for the drafting classes. But that made me, coming out of that, leaving there, graduating. I did end up going to community college directly after that. Didn't finish, didn't get a degree. I did basically more or less. I did 2 years there, did all my core classes. Decided that I wanted to go a different direction. Do I regret that now? Maybe. Maybe I do regret that a little bit now, which is fine, because that's what I'm here to do now, is to learn and to hopefully produce something from that learning. Hopefully I'm able to, make this something that I'm able to actually find a good path, and find myself and find a career and it's not even like I know the things that I want to do, so it's all going to tie together. It's just a matter of implementing it step by step, and hopefully seeing what may come out of this. And in continuance with this idea of manifesting, is it might be like, maybe bear with me for a minute if you would, because maybe as I am doing this video just live, as you for those of you who have been watching, are seeing these videos unedited, and on that note too, I actually meant to I meant to include a segment in this video, or at least I did it in last week's video, which perhaps I'll do it in a separate video, just since I forgot to actually bring it with me, and so I'd be able to do that. So perhaps I'll be able to make it in a separate video, as so 2:30 now, so it should be fun. I'll be able to put it in a completely separate video for those of you who are interested. That's just my little extra something I'd like to start as its own separate series, which actually works out good this way, because the last time it was included in this long form video, so now it will be a completely separate thing. So anyway, that will be something that I'll do after we finish here. Anyway, so something that I've experienced recently is kind of the same thing, just at work. I was already scheduled to work the evening. It was this past Sunday. I was already scheduled to work that night, and then ended up just getting up that morning, going and getting a coffee somewhere, which is kind of my normal routine. And I remember just being like, I wonder if someone's released their shift. I wonder if someone wants to give up their shift. And then, it was like, the feeling is like, I'm not stressed, I'm not worried, I'm not anxious, I'm not in need, right? I'm not like constantly going on there every second of every day trying to see if somebody's picking up shifts, especially because now my availability is weekends only. My availability at the moment is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then so far it's worked out good. When I first proposed this to the management there, they were a bit hesitant. They weren't, they'd even said, as in discussion with me about it, that they weren't sure if they wanted to actually have a weekends only server, which again, going about it in a manner that you're like completely, you're understanding, you're professional, respectful, which is the approach that, I absolutely implore, and that is something that I try to be very, very mindful about. It's not about kissing and it's not about brown nosing, right? Excuse me for that, by the way. It's not about brown nosing, sucking up to the management. No, it's nothing like that. It's just being observant, trying to be understanding, listening, being aware, being mindful about those. About how you're engaging in this conversation and what your exact approach is. Even though they were hesitant at first, it was like maybe a day or 2 days later where the general manager ended up coming up to me and saying, that's fine, you can go ahead and change your availability and we'll approve it for you to be weekends only. And I was like, thank you so much, much appreciated. I'll be sure to continue working hard and being a good worker and all that stuff. And so this was the time where I actually was working that full-time job, which I mentioned in either the last video or the video before that, where in the end it was something that I just wasn't into. I wasn't feeling it, and I wanted to do this. So me trying to, make this content my full-time job and be able to sort of not only improve on this content, but eventually start doing the other content that I want to do as well. Will eventually, as I continue to work myself up to making this my full-time gig until I'm actually in my first location for the things that I want to do. And then at that point, I mean, depending on how I figure out how to gauge being there the majority of the week and then being back in the area that I'm at now, which is where I work on the weekends, to make that work. Should be very interesting to see how that all plays out. But so anyway, going back to my more recent experience for this idea of manifesting, just believing in, thinking what are all the possible outcomes, and then just having good faith in how things will play out, but while also implementing your own ideas, your own thoughts in a productive, in a positive manner. I was already scheduled in the evening, the night shift. I went to look on there, and I was like, wonder if there's a shift available to pick up. And the very first, the one time I went on there, like I said, I wasn't going and checking it multiple times, refreshing the page, right? No, I literally thought it. I went on there. It was around, I don't know, it was between 8 or 9 in the morning. And I go on there, there's a shift available for lunch around noon. There was no one ahead, which basically means if you see that if there's 0 ahead, then you're good, you can pick it up. But if there's 1 or 2 or 3, that basically first come, first serve on that note. So there was no one ahead, went and picked it up, and I was able to get an extra shift. Toward the end of that shift, as I was about to go on break, for my night shift, and one of the other servers actually asked me if I wanted to work, and they were wondering, and basically they just said, I was going to see if I could take your shift, if I could pick up your shift. And I just said, no, I'm sorry, and then I was about to say this or that, and they're like, this other server I was talking to, I feel like they have, a pretty good head on their shoulders, and they were like, no, you don't have to explain, you don't have to say, you don't have to give a reason or anything. And I was like, yeah, you're right, yeah, that's fine, that's fair enough. And I was like, if I was to give a reason why I need to work tonight, it's because I work weekends only. And I did say that to them, and they were like, "Oh yeah, okay." And I guess that's why I don't see you during the week or something like that. So it's like, and then ended up working, making good money. Actually, I remember that shift ended up being much better than the lunch shift that I picked up. So I made way more in the night than I did lunch, which is pretty typical. The restaurant I serve at is Italian, is like spaghetti and those type of items. So, possibly more, in my eyes, more like kind of dinner type of menu items. On that note too, we do have a lunch menu that goes throughout the week, Monday through Thursday, I want to say. And I have done good on lunches before. On that, actually, there have been some lunch shifts that I've picked up where I've done really well, surprisingly well, especially shifts that I picked up during the week, on a Monday or Tuesday, where in my mind, I wouldn't have thought that we would have been that busy, or at least that I wouldn't have done that well. Ended up picking up a shift and ended up doing well. And that kind of goes right along with what I'm trying to say here is looking out for opportunities that are around you, whether it's in work, in your social life, I could go and make a completely different video on the more social side of that, especially my own experiences, what things I wish that I could do better and improve on, in that realm, right? But yeah, absolutely in the work sense, being, I mean, it really just depends on what type of work you do, I suppose, what field you're in. But if for those of you that maybe have similar setup as me, or at least work kind of jobs like that where they're technically part-time jobs, they're flexible in that kind of way, is good. I mean, again, depending on your situation, and not to go off on a rant in the other direction, but just to sort of give an idea of like what a comparison might be in terms of mindset, right? In terms of just perspective. And actually, it's funny saying these words too made me actually, like, I was seeing, I don't have any notes for today's video. I'm not looking at any notes, but I do have my book with me that has all my C's. This is all of the stuff that I want to do, and this is basically the sheet that has all of the kind of general video ideas that I want to do right here, and then it goes down the back of this list, and then there's empty space here for me to kind of reiterate, make notes, and then more ideas. So I have a good bit of ideas. Anyway, so not to go off on a rant in like comparing to others, not in that kind of way of like, I know my situation. I know I have low expenses. I know that I can work a part-time job, work weekends only, and make it work for my current lifestyle. And so far it's worked out fine. I've been able to save a substantial amount of money, and I've been able to do research, a little bit of research every day toward the things that I want to do, seeing what's available, seeing what's out there, seeing what I can get my hands on, material-wise, and tools, and all these things that are going to all eventually come together, and just, again, I'm trying to really be aware of my intentions, my motivations, making sure that my head's in the right place, that I'm not intentionally harming others or doing things that are in a negligent manner that can bring harm to others in that kind of way. And like, it's like an indirect direct sort of manner where you're not intentionally hurting others, but it actually is hurting someone. Like, you might not even be aware of it, but then at that point, then you're not aware of it. So what I would say on that is basically what I've been saying already, is just trying to be very mindful of what possible outcomes could happen by a decision you make, and also in those decision-making moments, should I accept, should I decline, should I fight for this, right? To be aware of what may come of that as well. And even just talking about that actually makes me think how much I've really fought for in my life. That's what they say, like, it's fight or die, or fight or flight, I guess is one thing that comes to mind when you're conflicted, when you're at a conflict, at a standstill with something. There's an obstacle, there's a wall in your way, you're conflicted with something, or you're engaged in a conflict with someone else, especially like relationships, right? That's what they say is, when it hits the fan, right, is fight or flight. Do I try to fight this out and hash this out, and what's the outcome of that going to be, right? Is this other individual going to, pick up what I'm putting down, and is this individual going to be understanding and try to work with me on this? And then that's actually another interesting thing too, not in a manipulating sense, right? Because that's this end of the spectrum, but just having the communication skills so that on the other end, in the positive way, if having a more manipulative nature or manner about your speech and what you're trying to, like, you're trying to coerce someone into doing what you want, that might be on on the opposite end of the spectrum. That's absolutely in the dark end of the spectrum. But in the light end of the spectrum is more. It might potentially be more difficult initially as you think about it, as you're trying to think about what you want to say to this person. You might be, very, tense, and you're not sure how it's going to play out. You're really not, but you want to try. You muster yourself. You get a little bravery in you. You get a little bit of courage, right? You just got to build it up. You muster it. And actually, focusing on that approach is 10 times more healthier and more beneficial to you and the receiving end, because they'll see that you're coming at it. You're not angry, right? You're not showing anger in that way that is just you're frustrated, you're upset. And you have to get that out in that kind of verbal way. I'm not saying, it's a bad thing, because even, in some instances, depending on the individuals, right? Depending on both parties involved or all parties involved, it can potentially play out in a positive manner, where two people are able to hash it out. There's going to be anger, and again, that sort of goes back to we are human. We show various emotions, but what direction are we going? So perhaps, maybe there are those that sort of go about this approach in this kind of we just need to hash it out. So whatever happens, and there's going to be all kinds of ups and downs with the emotions that are being displayed on both parties. And then, perhaps they are able to kind of figure out a way to do that, and while being mindful about what, about hopefully producing some kind of positive outcome, at least producing an outcome where they know what each other wants now. I mean, even if it does result in a breakup, right, in relationships, even if it results in a breakup, they at least know what each other wants. They're not on the same page, so they need to go separate ways. In that situation, provided there's no, extensive sort of dragging out of those last moments between those two individuals, there's no back and forth, no one's trying to change their mind about anything. At least in those situations, both individuals know what they want so that they can part ways and be healthy and be happy, right? That's the goal. But for those who, those who are or want to be more mindful about their speech and their tone, having that kind of mindfulness going into a potential, conflicting discussion, right, an argument, can be beneficial. So both are very interesting to me. I'd absolutely love to get my hands on some material that can sort of see what that looks like in both. I say both in both of those scenarios, but I'm sure there's a whole slew of scenarios, however they may break it down in whatever form of modern psychology or something like that someone's already put some content on. So I'll have to do some more research on that, see what I can find to be some actual substantial examples and information about that. But again, just from my own experiences with how I want a situation to play out, I will be very, I do actually try to think it through. I try to be very mindful about it and just, what is the best approach, and am I being positive? Asking myself that too. Am I just trying to, get the upper hand, or am I being selfish, right? Or is it just let's look at the bigger picture. and see where we can go with that in mind, in terms of like what how can everyone. Well, I suppose on that note too, I suppose that's where it can come down to like what type of solution is the outcome? Is it a compromise? Is it a win-win? Depending on how that plays out with whoever, whether you're trying to work out something with your either boss, whatever, the manager there, your employer, or a relationship, or a friend, or even just heat of the moment stranger, someone, things happen to where you have to work out a situation. You have to work it out in that moment, and it might bring up frustration, especially if it's a stranger, right? Like, road rage, right? Trying to avoid road rage means someone's going to have to be the bigger person, right, so to speak. Again, speaking from experience, of course I'm going to get frustrated if someone cuts me off, if someone wants to like go flying past me in the right lane, like passing me in the right lane. I'm in the left lane, I'm going the speed limit. Someone wants to just fly by and just, it's not like they're cutting me off, it's just that they're speeding, and it just, for some reason, I don't know why that upsets me, but for some reason it upsets me. And that's the other thing too. You don't know what's going on in their life. Maybe they're late. Maybe they had an emergency, this or that, right? Hopefully that's the case, and they're not just an impatient person, or just, maybe a little more negligent about road safety, I guess. But and that's one of those things where like that's one of those situations where in that moment you have to make a choice as to how you want to handle it, and how you want to come out of it. How do you see yourself coming out of that situation, so that with minimal casualties, I guess. And then, of course, there's the extreme of that situation, which is the more life-threatening of situations. Those that find themselves engaged with someone else that is threatening them. Those types of heat of the moment, those types of scenarios, I guess, absolutely present potential for you to choose. If it is a life-threatening, if someone's coming at you, right, with a knife or a gun, a weapon, or just coming at you in a violent manner, what do you do? I've found myself not necessarily life-threatening, but just in instances where someone was coming at me violently, to where I had to choose, what was going to happen. Some of those instances, they ended up getting the upper hand. They ended up, landing some blows on me, and then it never went any further than that. Fortunately for me, right? But then at the same time, I still have to ask myself, like, man, I wish that I could have done something, or done something more, or defended myself better, or proposed a possibly better outcome than how it played out in those instances. And it's gotten me thinking to try to pursue some type of self-defense, and things like that, which absolutely is on my list. Not in this, for the material that I'm doing with this, but in the other book that I have, which this book right here is basically all, this is all for, as I've alluded to already, getting to my first location to where I'm able to actually do these more kind of hands-on, more physical projects, and then me learning more skills to kind of further me along and enable me to get the ball rolling with that stuff. So because it's June now, and this right here is just me thinking out loud, if you will, bear with me on that. It's June now, so it's summer. We got June, July, August, September, and by that point here, where I'm at, it's already going to start. Basically, it's already going to start getting cold by September, sometime end of September and October. So if we did want to say October, just through the month of October, as it's getting colder, we could say 5 months. Which, of course, giving myself a goal for this content, however much I'm able to produce in a year's time, having that kind of separate goal with me getting to my first location within a 5-month time frame, or at least getting it started, getting it kind of set up, potentially getting it set up and ready to go for next spring would also be very, very good, very beneficial as well. So I'll provide more details down the road on that the other stuff that I want to do. But for now, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something, or if it, at the very least, have a little bit better understanding of the person I am, and how the things that I think about, and potentially, getting a little more excited for how this is going to play out down the road. So thank you for watching, and for those of you who are interested, I will make a separate video also today for the other content, the other series that I want to do as well. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. I'm going to go ahead and upload this and then get myself ready for the other video as well. So thank you for watching. See you in the next video.